All right. Well, welcome everybody to another exciting edition of Dungeon Delvers. We have we have conquered the Dungeon of the Warlock. It is far in the past, which makes me very happy.
Some of us
But
have physically suffered, more of us have emotionally suffered.
it's true. There was just suffering all around. But you know what? It was suffering for a good cause. Um, and thank you everyone who joined us. Thank you everyone who contributed. It was a hoot. And we are currently working on another community goal that I think will be just as enjoyable for audience and hosts alike. So, again, thank you for joining us. As always, his name is Gene,
He's Rennie.
and
Okay.
together
We
we are
are unconventional
unconventional heroes.
heroes. Nailed it.
So bad. Um, and this show, if it's your first time tuning in, be aware that this show is pure opinions. We're not doctors. We're not scholars. We're not
Much to our
scientists.
parents' chagrin.
Much to the disappointment of our parents. But we are nerds with opinions. And today we're going to share our opinions and some facts, I suppose, about the Sorcerer class for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Um, as always, as we go through our show and as we kind of explore the dungeon, as it were, of the sorcerer class, if you have questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, whatever the case may be, please feel free to jump into our chat and put them up there, and we will address them as they come. Some we might ignore, but it's only because we're going to cover that subject or that aspect of the class further in down in the episode. So I don't know, Gene. Do you have anything you want to talk about before we get
Uh,
started?
yeah, I can do that. So, tomorrow we will be continuing our Lost Legacy campaign. Uh, it should start around 7:30, but we might have a earlier start time, and we'll get to you as soon as we know that. Um, I know that we took a little bit of a hiatus on Chris's game, Lost Minds of Fandelver, as we transfer over to the Tyranny of the Dragon Queen, and that'll be next Wednesday, I believe, is our first start game again. Um, Exciting stuff, and I'm sure he'll talk about that tomorrow. Because I don't want to spoil things if I'm not allowed to. I don't know. I didn't decide anything, so I don't know. I know nothing, like Jon Snow. But yeah, besides that, I'll give you a hint. Our community goal might involve me with more latex, and that's always fun, as we've learned today or a few days ago. Or I don't want to remember these.
my not so subtle hint is think Safari.
uh,
Uh,
yeah,
without further ado, Gene, I think it's time for initiative.
sure. Why don't you go first while I do
All right,
some chicanery?
that sounds good to me. Let us enter the dungeon of the sorcerer. Oh, did I do it wrong? Maybe I did it wrong.
It's exclamation point R.
Ah, I did roll. But I got a 13.
13. All right.
Ooh, and we have some lovely musical stylings to go into this dungeon. Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah, baby. It's time for me to get my one rolling for the night. There we go. Just a little bit more bright. There we go. Okay. So, our first room, as we always like to do, why be a sorcerer? Well, many answers are why not? But here's some inspiration from popular culture such as movies, TV, books, and comics. Um, if you want to think of one of the more common sorcerers that I'm sure people are now familiar with, Scarlet Witch, Rennie says Doctor Strange only because Sorcerer Supreme's in his title, but he's not really a sorcerer. He's a wizard. But whatever. um, Harry Dresden. Again, there could be arguments made for sorcerer versus wizard.
I mean, listen, there's a lot of bloodline nonsense. With
That's
Dresden,
true.
so.
That's true. He might have multi-classed and decided int and charisma are his stats, but he only definitely has a 13 charisma because that dude does not do well. Thulsa Doom, two snakes facing each other. You know, any of those like chosen one stories from different, it's like your bloodline has unlocked an ancient secret. Like that is definitely a sorceric art, style. Yeah, sorceric. That's the word I will always.
100% not a word, but I like it.
We're Shakespeareing it. Anyway, Merlin, because he was born with power. Another good sorcerer. Some call him a wizard, but others call him a sorcerer. Gandalf, because he's definitely an angel boy who has super wizard powers, but he's not actually a wizard, even though they call him a wizard. I don't know if he studied. He just
listen. We don't need to get into the esotericon.
Well, we don't want to bust out the Silmarillion and then figure out if that's a sorcery class. Willow from Buffy, using her like witchy powers and all that stuff. Another Zatanna from the DC Comics. Jafar could also be kind of like an enchanting sorcerer. Ursula the Sea Witch. If you want to get weird with David Lopan, he could be a sorcerer because he has that like weird origin. Maybe, and if you want to go even stranger, but this could just be David Bowie, but Jareth the Goblin King could be a sorcerer, the way he manipulates magic in the world, and that contact juggling, that was a magic in itself.
I mean, listen, if his power came from charisma, David Bowie was 1,000,000% a fucking sorcerer.
Yeah, he could fit in any category depending on if he was Ziggy Stardust at the time or a different person.
That's so utterly true. Yeah, and I mean, no matter where you find your inspiration, a part of what or why you might want to be a sorcerer is you get access to powerful magical options, and not just spells, but meta magic and class features that really. And something I have loved about Sorcerer is they very much lean into their theme. Oh, do you have dragon blood? Dope. You are all about dragons. Maybe a specific dragon, but like dragons, it's gonna come up. Like it's gonna be part of who you are. And same with wild magic, and same with storm magic. These things are gonna be very ever present with who and what you are. So yeah, I kind of love that aspect of sorcerers.
Oh yeah, and I think it really kind of also comes down to it's like any of those like because you have the pure bloodline like that like follows. There's so many stories with like the blood of kings flows through me, so now I have power. Heck, if you want to take consideration, like the pharaohs of Egypt could have been sorcerers, descended from the gods. But they also have they get a very fun spin on magic that some of the more learned casters and others don't. They can cast spells with tweaks in new ways. And it's a little bit of a holdover from third ed, but I definitely think it was a wise and fun choice to be like, hey, here are the rules as written, as we like, here are spells, but why don't you throw them in a blender and see what happens, because you're a sorcerer, so pew pew pew.
Right. Shoot your lasers with maximum efficiency. And for some players, they like that aspect of that high charisma. And I'll be honest, I think with sorcerers, as opposed to just being like, hello everybody, what's happening? I'm the hot shit in town, with that like high social charisma, I feel like there's really cool ways to kind of play their charisma differently where, you know, they are these creatures, they have this draconic majesty. And maybe they aren't like the best talker or the best this, they just sort of have this aura that a dragon might have if it walked among you. Or they can kind of lean into their bloodline or their ancestry to really make that charisma shine in maybe non-traditional ways, which again is always fun if you are trying to mix it up and play up that side of your character.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they're like the gifted or prodigy students in a class who are still lazy and don't do homework but get B's and A's
You know the
because
one.
you know because they get all like the powerful ninth level spells and all of the arcane mastery, but do not need a drop of common sense or intelligence to back that up. And it's kind of hilarious to piss off your wizard friends. It's just funny. Or just like to do wildly dangerous things because you cut the brakes and you're the wild card.
That is probably the most fun part of playing a wild magic sorcerer is just going wild card
Woo!
magic.
I'm a danger to myself and others. Woo!
All right. Well, that was our easy first level of the dungeon. Let us move further into what does it mean to be a sorcerer in D&D.
That's. You roll yet?
I mean, yeah.
I did it.
Ooh,
16.
16. Ooh, man, I think
Coming out
Gina,
strong.
yeah, I think the warlock dungeon is still having some enervating effects on my rolls.
Maybe it's because I multi-class into sorcerer.
Oh,
Oh,
what's up? What the fuck is up?
spoke too soon. If only I could bend luck
Sadly,
or
you are not a sorcerer.
reach into my own divine favor.
Well, to kind of kick things off with what does it mean to be a sorcerer, besides beating Gene in initiative, is
You don't gotta be a sorcerer for that.
it helps. I'll be honest. I used my wild magic talent constantly to get advantage on initiative because you fucking can. But what I love about sorcerer, which I touched on earlier, is that your sorcerer's origin, where you get your power, is a great tool and a great marriage of roleplay and mechanics, right? A lot of classes, not that they kind of make you, dive deeper into the thought process, but sorcerers kind of front load you with, hey, your magic came from a dragon. What was that dragon like? How did that dragon's blood make its way to you? They definitely give you a lot more parameters to work within. And again, you can go against the mold. Um, and maybe your wild magic is not because you were born during a wild magic storm, but maybe it's a curse, and the curse that was laid on you makes any magic you do unpredictable. And so there are a lot of ways to interpret these, but the cool thing about the sorcerer class is it very much gives you this skeletal structure to work within, whether you stay inside that skeletal structure or kind of pivot left or right on it. You have that there for you, and a lot of the mechanics of the class itself kind of support that theme, and that's always great for a storytelling aspect.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I don't know, like part of their idea is that as we kind of talked about, they're not learned. They're not like the book wielding wizard who has countless spells that he's transposed or based upon how wise your druid or cleric is, how many spells they can know a day. You're just like, I got magic and there's a set amount. I don't control it. I don't know. I can't change it. And
I got very specific magic that I can do.
and
Don't ask for more or less, because that's all
like
I
you probably know how it works better than I do. Let's be honest here.
got.
And so the idea of like their spellcasting is very unique. I mean, it follows other people who are like bards and stuff, where it's like you only know a certain amount of spells, and that's kind of it. But it definitely makes sense in their building of the class because like you get to build a theme like, oh, were you a draconic sorcerer? Well, maybe you took a bunch of spells that fit the theme of that dragon. Were you a this kind of sorcerer? Well, then you leaned in spells towards this, like, oh, I'm a mind sorcerer, like Aberrant, so I went with control spells and like manipulation of the mind, and so it's like you can kind of fit how you maybe you're a battle sorcerer and you're like, cool, I give people haste and enlarge and I tweak people in their moment, and so each of your spells kind of helps define what kind of sorcerer you are and like what that means. Like you don't always have to take counterspell and fireball, but you probably want it.
Yeah, and I kind of like that too. Is that like you're not like a wizard who's like, no, I read some books and I know the basics of magic and I can apply that in any number of ways. As a sorcerer, you're like, I got some raw magic and I pressed it down into this, whatever that is, charm person, lightning bolt, whatever. But you're just like, I figured it out. I just shoved magic in the right direction, and yup, here we are. Um, so that's always a cool kind of aspect for them. But what I love, one of the other things about being sorcerers, you get this font of magic, aka sorcery points, which is a really cool way to play with that resource management concept in D&D, which you hear about and read about so much. And kind of the basics, without getting too nitty gritty with it, is you get a number of sorcery points equal to your level, starting at second level, and those sorcery points can be used to fuel meta magic options, certain class features, and you can translate sorcery points into spell slots and spell slots into sorcery points. There is a chart that tells you what you get going in either direction. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it is a really cool way to kind of again set yourself apart from the learned wizard and the pack magic warlock. Like you're like, I do magic and I figured it out, and sometimes it's a fucking weird.
Oh yeah, definitely. You're like magic. I am the weirdness. I am the best. But also, like, not only that does that feed your main, kit and caboodle. Like your sorcery points are what you are.
I mean, what's a caboodle?
You know, I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I imagine it's something like a papoose.
Oh, okay, okay.
But your sorcery points, that's your entirety of your class, and then and kind of every other part of your class gives you the ability to interact with those. So like eventually you get meta magic, which is super dope. And that lets you bend the rules of spellcasting. You're like, well, my fireball does ice. Why doesn't yours? I don't know. I sneezed and a lightning bolt came out of me and you didn't see me cast a spell. So crazy. I don't know how that happened. Does that not happen to you? Uh, what, when you shoot bolts of force out of you, they don't just split and hit two separate people? Am I the weird one? Am I the weird one? Like, and so I think like their meta magic is really one of the biggest appeals. In fact, in Tasha's, they made it a feat that people who could cast spells could start getting access to some of these. Which again, this is held over from third edition when meta magic was a huge feat you could take and get real crazy. But giving it to kind of this one class makes the sorcerer kind of the unique person. Like they bend magic kind of to their will, and I'm sure that doesn't make your wizard friends happy. So, yeah, you get to be because you can be very creative with certain spells and abilities because of your ability to meta magic. You could, play a character who doesn't consciously know they can cast magic, and so you can burn your sorcery points and be like, I constantly settle spell, because I don't even know I'm doing. Like, and that's kind of a role play opportunity that you can decide as you go.
Yeah, and we're gonna and sorcery points, depending on your bloodline. But to kind of round out the final ability that sorcerers get, which is funny because they don't get a lot of like quote unquote class abilities. Their bloodline gives them a lot of those. But their 20th level, if you go all sorcerer all the way, which you're not going to have a bad time doing, you get this ability called Sorceress Restoration, and you gain 4 sorcery points at the end of any short rest, which, to be honest, is kind of cool because short rests do very little for a sorcerer other than perhaps healing you. So for if you really stick it out and make it to 20th level in your campaign, you finally get something out of a short rest because Lord knows you're going to use those sorcery points.
Oh,
Like that is going to happen.
you could burn them all in one round.
Yeah, not even trying hard. Like
And then to kind of go off is like, well, what a little bit more of like kind of what's their role in combat, since D&D is a combat game. They are a blaster depending on the build. Your utility depending on what spells you chose. You are crowd control, and you'll also get the benefits of being a full caster without any lame restrictions like warlock.
yep.
No, but you're a full caster, which means that even if you multi-class into other casting classes, you're still going to maintain that progression. And their abilities are very good even at low levels. Like, skipping, like, any type of caster, getting a little bit of sorcerer, you're probably not going to be met.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Um, and speaking of their combat role, of course, we have to think of their out of combat role as well, as you're probably going to spend more time out of combat than in, depending on your campaign. Um, but you have this strong connection to an arcane power source, which is going to provide some possible role play opportunities, which is always fun. Um, you are going to be a charismatic creature. No matter how you manifest such charisma, you are going to be a boon to your party by being able to tackle some of those charisma based social challenges. And then again, out of combat, depending on the spells you take as a sorcerer, you might have taken some utility spells because Lord knows you ain't casting rituals. But you might have thought about your out of combat capabilities and taken some utility spells to help yourself or your party in a variety of ways. Um, so yeah, I think we covered what it means to be a sorcerer, and now we have to dive just a little bit deeper into some of those aspects.
Before we do that, do we want to just touch a little bit on some of the Tasha stuff? As all we, or do we put that somewhere?
Sure. Sure. We can talk about the Tasha's optional stuff.
Yeah. So Tasha kind of gave every casting class a boost of spells, and some spells that you would have thought you should have had on your list and you realize you didn't appeared. Like any of like Flaming Sphere. I'm surprised it wasn't, but it is now. Um, a lot of different like fun and definitely I think like a lot of the cantrips they kind of got was really big improvements. That if you want to be fighty, you could be. I didn't know that sorcerers didn't have grease, and now I do. uh, so they got a nice spell selection boost at pretty much every level, and I think that was really nice because a lot of their meta magic interacts with like some touch spells, and they didn't have a lot of touch spells before, but now they do. And so that's kind of just touching in, and they got a bunch of extra magic, and that was neat.
Yep. And you can letting you trade out your meta magic and your cantrips as when you get ASIs or ability score increases is really nice because you might find your character who took meta magic options when you were lower level aren't really being used now that you're higher level. So I like the fact that you can kind of evolve your meta magic. And there's not even a huge number of meta magic options, but if you're not using a meta magic option, you shouldn't have it. Straight up,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, and then the last kind of very minor thing they get is magical guidance at 5th level, which lets you attempt to turn a failure into success for 1 sorcery point. You get to re-roll a die on an ability check, which I think is nice and neat. I don't know that it's necessary, but it's nice.
They just want to give you more options to burn your sorcery points with.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Oh,
Um,
all right. So do we roll initiative again? I guess.
we do. We are going to dive into sorceress origins and meta magic options. Why don't you roll first this time, big guy?
Oh, okay.
Oh, you rolled first last time. Oh, buddy.
I did. I won the one. That's all I need. I get one. That's
That's
the
fair.
rule.
That's fair.
Them's the rules.
You did kind of call it, didn't you?
Uh-huh.
And to nobody's surprise, of course, once again, initiative is mine. So starting at this level of the dungeon, we always like to talk about you tell a story through the choices you make when you build your character and when you level up your character and when you take feats and stuff like that. Um, and again, there is a very good skeletal structure for sorcerers. Your power source is usually laid out to you pretty. I mean, it is always laid out for you pretty early on. But again, there's nothing saying you can't customize that flavor. Um, maybe you are a draconic bloodline, but yours is a Draco Lich, and that means something slightly different for you. Um, and you can kind of take a tweak on any number of things. But always keep in mind when you are making choices for your character, those choices should reflect a growth, story development, that sort of thing. So to start out, we're going to talk about meta magic options, and then we're going to move into our sorcerer's origins. So, Gene, you want to just kind of go back and forth on these?
Sure. So, yeah. The first one to kind of look at, alphabetical order and all that fun stuff. Except for the later ones. Careful spell. Low sorcery point cost. I think it's like one, maybe two.
It's literally one.
It's one. It doesn't matter what level spell you cast. And it lets you make your friends and you know uh take less damage because it doesn't make them immune. It just makes them auto save. So they take half damage opposed to generally taking the full brunt of any evocation or combat spells that they're going to be caught in the area effect.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. It's based on how much I think charisma you have, lets you affect how many people, but generally you can get a good number of your party members a bit safer. You can't save them completely, but you can make them feel good. And what's neat about it is, certain spells where like evasion would trigger on like fireballs and lightning bolt. Yeah, that's gonna be really nice. But for those spells like Cone of Cold and Shatter that rely on con, not a lot of people get advantage or get a way to save for half easy. So by you giving everyone that auto success, it really helps. So like some of the spells that careful spell is useful, Fireball, Cone of Cold, Shatter, any of those big explosive large area effect spells that don't know from.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, One of the next meta magic options is Distant Spell. It's got a very low sorcery point cost. You're able to double the range of any spell that is 5 feet or greater, or turns touch spells into 30-foot range spell. Now, doubling the range of any spell, combat or otherwise, is always nice if you need to really make a spell land on someone farther away. You're going to be very happy to have it. But being able to turn touch spells into 30-foot range spells, that's where this really shines. Because there's a lot of powerful touch spells out there like haste, um, and any number of buff spells or debuff spells. And some of the spells that really shine when you double their range is stuff like counterspell, because all wizards and sorcerers and warlocks, I guess, know that 60 feet, like you want to be 65 feet from all
61 feet away.
61 feet from all magic casting enemies. But with distance spell, you'd be like, "What are you talking about, big guy? I can counterspell at 120," and you can really fuck up someone's day if they think they're safe and you prove to them they're not. So yeah, distance spell is pretty solid.
Oh yeah, definitely. Uh, Empowered spell. It's again a very low sorcery point cost. It lets you re-roll any number of damage dice in a spell you're using, up to, equal to your charisma mod. So it can really make it so that any damage spells you do, if you roll shit, you can really pack a punch. Plus, the nice thing is, a lot of the meta magic can't be combined, but empowered spell allows you to combine it with other meta magics. Now that will
Yeah,
become costly, but you can still do it.
yeah. It might cost you something, but if your fireball did 22 damage, you're like, no, 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 no. That's not how this operates. And yeah. Cool. Next one up is Extended Spell, one that I like very much. Again, a very low sorcery point cost, but it lets you double the duration of any spell, um, which is awesome. Some spells that have short durations, doubling their duration is useful, but not crazy. Things like Haste, again, it's just a great spell. So if you can make it last 2 minutes instead of 1 minute, that's nice. I'm sure there are situations where that matters. Um, but things like invisibility that last an hour, well, now you have a 2 hour invisibility. Enlarge Reduce, which lasts 10 minutes, now lasts 20 minutes. So, and there's plenty of other good spells that go with this, but doubling the duration of spells can set you up really nicely if you use it creatively.
Oh yeah, there's some, and also if like you're a divine sorcerer, there's some really weird things you can do with that too. Get them cleric spells.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's see. So, heightened spell. It has generally a high sorcery point cost, but you give the first target of your spell disadvantage. So that's really good for creatures that have like magic resistant. Or if you're like, man, we just burnt through all this person's legendary resistances. I really want to make sure they fail. Um, it's a high cost, but you're gonna make it land. Some really neat spells: hold person or hold monster, crown of madness, dominate person, and I'd even add it, throw in like a slow, like
Oh
make
yeah.
that person slow, and you won't regret it. So it's really cool to really make sure, especially if you're only doing a single target spell, you want to make sure it lands.
Yeah, big time. I mean, and it's still even good for like damaging spells like a disintegrate. You're like,
Oh
I
yeah,
really, really want to disintegrate that guy
yeah,
or
against
thing.
yeah those save or nothing spells, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Next up, probably one of the most powerful and most often chose sorcery meta magic options is Quicken Dispel. It's got a variable sorcery point cost equal to the level of the spell cast, but it makes a one action cast attempt spell into a bonus action. This is just incredibly powerful. It can drain you of sorcery points if you get a little crazy with it, but it's literally good for any spell when it comes down to action economy or needing to do oh shit, my buddy's down, I need to put a potion in their face and I still want to cast a spell at the bad guy or bad guys. So it's just a fantastic option. um, I'll say this: even if you use it to double up cantrips, sometimes you can really hammer someone with double fire bolts or double ray of frosts if you want to really eat up their movement speed. So there's a lot of uses for it, and you're never gonna be sad you spent the sorcery points on it.
Or if you want to drop that lightning bolt and then get a bonus action attack with a blade cantrip.
Yeah, 100%.
And then next is probably one of Rennie's favorites because he's used it so much. He's probably one of the first few I've seen use it, which is Subtle Spell. Uh, and it is awesome because it's low sorcery point cost, and you make it so your spells don't need semantic or verbal components. So it's a really great option for like being a sneaky caster. You want to do a subtle charm person while you're in a crowded room. No one's gonna see you do it because you just say something, or even a suggestion. You can word that right into a sentence
Oh yeah.
with
Oh,
suggestion
absolutely.
only needing a verbal component. And then the nice thing about it is, since people don't see you cast magic because you don't need to use those options, you become very hard to counterspell. You also have a neat trick around silence.
Yeah, you can get around silence, which could be like a caster killer. But with subtle spell, you're like, I don't need to say shit. Bwam!
So, uh, yeah, and yeah, so that's great. And then Rennie gets to talk about the other really cool one.
That's true. True. Again, one of the most often chosen and honestly one of the most powerful is Twinned Spell. Again, another variable sorcery point cost, depending on spell level, and you make a single target spell affect two targets instead of one. Sounds simple, but is in fucking credible. Um, it's, don't get me wrong, if you can blight two people or disintegrate two people, you're gonna have a good time. And you're really gonna you're gonna gain the ire of whatever you're doing, but it really shines with buff spells and healing spells. I mean, again, anyone who has seen some of the other unconventional hero stuff will know that one of my wild magic sorcerer's favorite moves was to twin cast haste on the two warriors in the party and just kind of sit back, just kind of throw some firebolts and like give them thumbs up occasionally and just let them do their thing, because honestly, two people hasted at the same time for the price of one, you're gonna it's gonna get real crazy real fast.
Oh yeah.
um, and even enlarge reduce, where you enlarge one party member and reduce an enemy. um, you know there are a lot of really interesting things you can do with twin spell. uh, but it's probably the one. Quickened and twinned are probably the ones you see the most, I would say, on sorcerer
I
character
would
sheets.
I would agree that as well. Yeah. And then these are some of the Tasha's options, which is Seeking Spell. It has a medium sorcery point cost, and it lets you try to turn a miss into a hit with anything you make a ranged spell attack on. So it's great at high levels when you have a billion sorcery points and you really want to land a spell like Chromatic Orb, because that does a lot of damage. Heck, even Chaos. Oh wait, Chaos Bolt might not make it because more than one spell. But I don't know. Chaos Bolt is another roll to hit. Scorching Ray. Any of those. If you're a Divine Sorcerer, Guiding Bolt. Plenty of attack spells. Any of the rays. That you're like, I really want that ray to hit. I need to enfeeble the shit out of that person. Please let me do that. Um, so it's just anything that if you're going to roll to hit, and being a main primary caster, a lot of your stuff is going to do that way. So it's even going to make those cantrips that are now juicy at higher levels hit more. And that's great.
Yeah, definitely. That one is came out in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, as did Transmuted Spell. It's got a low sorcery point cost. It's one sorcery point, and you get to change the damage type of a spell to another. And the list, you can find the list in D&D Beyond or in Tasha's book itself, but it tends to be all the elemental choices: acid, cold, fire, thunder, lightning. Um, it's kind of situational, depending on your sorceress origin or the enemies you're fighting. Um, but with some of the storm sorcerer kind of abilities that only activate off thunder and lightning damage spells, well, all of a sudden a fireball is a thunderball, or a cone of cold is a cone of lightning. Uh, and the same thing with draconic sorcery. They have whatever damage type is your chosen one, that will affect other things. So transmuted spell might not look great as an option, but depending on your sorcerer's origin, it can really kind of be huge for you.
Also, if you combo that with like Elemental Adept, you can,
Oh
like you
yeah,
said, you can make sure any spell you cast has the spell you want it to be.
right. All right, Gene, you ready to go into sorceress origins?
I believe I am. All right. I guess this is not a new room. I guess we'll just keep going down the list as we were doing before. All right. So Aberrant Mind, they're really freaking weird. So you, it's the only way to say it. You get your powers from the far realm, and much like in D&D, most of the gross monsters are aberrants. You have essentially an aberration of magic, a wild thing that is in itself wrong, but far beyond our understanding. Uh, it they get a bunch of spells, which are kind of gross, but in like a fun way, like Arms of Hadar, Dissonant Whispers. Like Mind Sliver, such a great cantrip. People should use it. But they also get like these like mental manipulation spells, and what's really neat about them is they count as part of the spell list without requiring you to have spells known. So that's pretty cool. Plus, you can also trade out these spells for divination or enchantment spells from any warlock, wizard, or sorcerer. So if you don't like specific ones in here, you can change them to be the ones you do. That's kind of cool. You want X? Because you apparently get X now. I just read. uh,
Yeah.
the other one is they got a telepathic link, so they can kind of do telepathy. And it's pretty far that it goes out, and like miles equal to your charisma mod, and it lasts for a number of minutes, but that's still awesome.
It's also at will telepathy.
Yeah,
That's fuck amazing. It's
yeah,
1-on-1, but who cares?
yeah. Sorry, dry. What's cool is when you cast any spells from that special list of spells you get, you can expend sorcery points equal to the level of the spell to cast it without verbal, semantic, or material, unless you have a specific item that needs consumed. You can literally be like, I actually have psychic powers. I don't have to use these resources to make it. But it costs you spell points, so it's like the trade off is mind magic versus, actually not using your points. The other ability they get is they get resistance to psychic damage, which is a pretty rare resistance, plus advantage against being charmed or frightened. So your mind has become so like aberrated that you now can defend against sources trying to get you. And then their level 14 is hyper gross but hyper cool. The Revelation of Flesh, where they can get a bonus action and spend a number of sorcery points, and they can get this 10-minute transformation depending on what they get, and they choose which they want. You can see invisibility, but your eyes turn black, or you get sensory tendrils. So whatever that means. You can get a fly speed, but you then get covered in like mucus or shine with like otherworldly starlight. You can gain a swimming speed and get real fast and breathe underwater, but you get gills or like neck fans and your hands web, or you get like fins. And then the other one is you kind of you just get covered in slime and ooze, and you become like a putty person, as you can get through 1-inch spaces. You literally become the governor at the end of X-Men, where he becomes that like water flesh human. But you can essentially you kind of get like a 10-minute almost freedom of movement for the sake of escaping. And then lastly, you get an ability to teleport and then suck everyone into like a vacuumous space behind you, which could be really nice if you had a quicken spell to throw a fireball where that was. You know,
Gather everyone up in a nice little cluster,
and
and
then
then
boo. So, in the end, like it's a definitely unique sorceress origin. You do kind of get really weird, and your spells kind of make you weird. Plus, your flesh changing
you're
is weird.
gross.
It's
You're
just
gross.
gross, but it's really cool to kind of give you another aspect of like what happens if you were a tadpole is semi dormant in your brain and giving you powers. Like you could have some really fun ways with the aberrant sword.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Next up, we have the Clockwork Soul. I'm still not convinced that Jean isn't a Clockwork Soul sorcerer, but you gain your power from the cosmic forces of order. And again, I'll say this: I like this a lot because it's very much sort of, I don't know. It's a cool pivot away from a lot of traditional sorcerers, where like your blood is inflamed with power. You do wild magic. You're an aberrant mind. Clockwork Soul is like you have the magic of keeping the line. And I don't know. I kind of like that they added something like that for flavor and roleplay. Uh, you get some really great additional spells, honestly, from Clockwork Soul. Things like Greater Restoration, Lesser Restoration, Aid. Um, you get, I think, protection from good and evil. You just get some like really good spells to go in line with it. And I'll say this, we talked about some of the aberrant mind spells that you get, and some of the Clockwork Soul spells you get. It's kind of a shame that these sorcerer subclasses came out later than the originals, and they never kind of went back and gave the originals kind of list of spells they just get to like be in theme with them. I think it's a little bit of a misstep, but here we are. I do like that they kind of give you these options of what sort of strange mechanical things happen to your body or around you while you cast this magic. Do your eyes turn into clocks? Does your skin become brassy? It's just weird. The world bends a little bit when you cast magic, and I like that a lot. Restore balance as their initial feature. I love this because you get to just essentially cancel out advantage and disadvantage. You're like, whatever happens next, it is by your own merit, your own skill. Fate will not intervene, and I like that a lot. um, which because it can be both good for your allies and good against your enemies. So I like that this is one of those like your order does not know friends or allies, you just know order. Bastion of Law in my opinion is a extremely powerful ability, um, where you can spend up to 5 sorcery points to give another creature or yourself a sort of a shield of damage mitigation equal to a number of d8s equal to the sorcery points. And when they take damage, they can choose how many of those dice to use to mitigate. So if you know you're taking a big hit from a spell, from a dragon, from whatever, you're like, fuck it, I'm using all of them. If you know you're going to take a lot of little hits, you can kind of spread it out. And I really like that it gives you the option to sort of control your damage mitigation. Next up, you get the Trance of Order, where you just, as a bonus action, for 1 minute, you can, you know, no attack rolls against you can have advantage. And whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, if you roll less than a 10, it's a 10. So I just love that you're like, this is going to go, it slightly does put things in your favor, but in a very ordered fashion. um, and you can reactivate this with a high sorcery point cost, 5 sorcery points, but you can access this more than once. I think the real moneymaker, the really cool one, is Clockwork Cavalcade, where you make this 30-foot cube around you of pure order and summon the spirits of Madrons or constructs or just magical order energy. Um, and you get to heal people for you get 100 hit points worth of healing, which you can divide however you want amongst the people within this cube. Any damaged objects entirely in the cube are repaired instantly. Now I'll say it's an 18th level ability, but I can see that being a really cool plot thing or a way that you can enhance a story where it's like, oh, this ancient device that no longer functions because of time and age. You're like, what are you talking about? Wow. And you just repaired a 2,000-year-old thing, whatever. Um, and it doesn't say magic, it doesn't say non magic, just says objects. So again, I think with a little bit of creativity and GM adjudication, you can get a little janky with that. And then the last, but certainly not least thing, any spell of 6th level or lower ends on creatures or objects of your choice. So it's not just a blanket, all magic is gone. It's like this magic yes, this magic no, this yes, and I think it's a really cool sorcerer's bloodline if you are, looking to explore that path. I'm sure Warforged sorcerers would make an excellent Clockwork Soul, but yeah, they're really neat.
Yeah, they're really cool, and I think these are, again, I think this is another one of the new ones from Tasha's.
It is.
Given those extra spell slot like choices and ability to change them out, so nice. Now next, the one that I am most familiar with, the Divine Soul. The Divine Soul, they are essentially like, think of Godborn. They got a little bit of divine power in them, and that's kind of lets you be a chosen vessel for divine magic. The specialty of that is they can choose spells from the cleric spell list, which with some sorcery points and meta magic can get real weird and juicy. Also, depending on what affinity they have, kind of gives them an extra spell they know, which is nice because, again, you don't have a lot of spells, and it doesn't count against it. And you can replace it with another spell from a spell list, so from the cleric spell list. So it's not like if you get one you don't like, you can't change that out later. Then they get their other first ability, which is Favored by the Gods, where they can, once per short or long rest, add a d4 to a failed saving throw or miss with an attack. 2d4, that's a pretty big game changer. That's anything from 2 to 8 once per rest. Nice. Level 6, they get Empowered Healing, which at first when I read it was like, oh, that's not great. But then I reread it as amazing, because when you are an ally within 5 feet, you rolls dice to determine the number of hit points. You spend 1 sorcery point to reroll any number of those dice, provided you aren't incapacitated. So that means that you can always reroll, and it's super cheap too. So as long as you or your friends are getting healed around you, that could be a healing potion, that could be anything, you could always give it a chance to do more.
Yeah.
And then lastly, or not lastly, but the other one, Otherworldly Wings. Of course you need wings. Why wouldn't you need wings? Who doesn't need to fly? And then you kind of, you can choose what your flavor, depending on, what god-ishness you have. And then lastly, your 18th level ability just heals you for half your hit points when you are below half. So that's pretty cool. And you can do that once every long rest. So you kind of get a little bit of a stability and ability to affect healing. Plus, you have the versatility of cleric spells, which can get real bananas. Just
insane.
It can get real juice. Like, just, it's real weird. And, like, twin heals and other things and quicken, like, you can get real weird with Divine Sorcerer. But also remember, you do have that limited known spell list, so that's the balancing act you go with. But it's amazing. Just really good.
It's pretty dope, yeah. Next one is an oldie but a goodie. Is the Draconic Bloodline. You gain power from a straight up motherfucking dragon. Which, again, if you don't think dragons are cool and you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you might be playing the wrong game. But, you know, you get to choose a dragon, and somewhere down the line, its blood made its way to you and manifested in awesome cosmic power. Um, I do really like again a lot of these. This is Draconic Bloodline came out with the original PHB, so a lot of these abilities are pretty straightforward. Not a lot of nuance like some of the other ones you've seen, but again, you're still gonna feel like a cool, you know, dragon magic person with this. Um, so it starts out, of course, you pick your draconic ancestor, what color of dragon they were, and that damage type affects other things down the line. You get to, of course, speak, read, and write draconic. And whenever you make a charisma check when interacting with dragons, you essentially get expertise on the check, which I think is great. Where you're just like, no, 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 I know how to talk to dragons. um, Draconic Resilience, pretty much you get free mage armor via dragon scales, and you get more hit points. It's pretty straightforward, more AC, more HP, but it lets you be a little more of a rough and tumble sorcerer. Um, Especially with some of the blade cantrips that you now get through Tasha's, if those options are available to you. That can, you know, that can go a long way. Next, you of course get Elemental Affinity. That when you cast a spell that deals damage associated with your ancestor, you get to add your charisma modifier to one damage roll of that spell. Nice little way to boost your damage. And you can spend a sorcery point while doing so to gain resistance to that damage type for an hour. Very nice. It's, you know, again, straightforward. Do a little extra damage, resist some damage. It's not flashy, but it's certainly effective. Dragon wings, because you have a dragon blood, you of course get dragon wings. What were you thinking? Um, yeah, that's just pretty much they're there until you don't want them to be. Why you wouldn't want them to be, I do not know.
And
But
and to point out, they're cooler than Divine Wings because they go as fast as equal to your current speed, so they can get boosted.
nice. That's true. That's true. That is a good catch there, Gene. Last but not least, at 18th level, you get Draconic Presence, where you essentially get that horrifying dragon aura that they are so known for, where you can do a 60-foot aura. I mean, it takes an action and 5 sorcery points, but you can do this aura of fear or an aura of charm, essentially. Um, and you have to kind of concentrate it like a spell, but each hostile creature, which is important so your friends can exist within it and not just get boned by your awesome dragon presence. Um, you know, if they fail their save, they're either charmed by you or frightened by you, depending on what aura you chose. And if they succeed, they're immune for a 24-hour period. I like this because it's very flavorful to the class. I will say though, I think by the time you hit 18th level, throwing around fear and charm is okay, but there's going to be a lot of powerful enemies that just don't care about fear and charm.
That's,
So, don't get me wrong, when you do get to use it and you fight, like, you know, people, like humans, you're gonna be awesome. But, you know, if you're fighting a little more esoteric and a little more, you know, supernatural stuff, you might not find a lot of times that this is useful.
yeah, no, yeah. I mean, but it's really it's cool. It fits the theme, and they really like nailed the flavor in that. Um, so moving on, the Shadow Magic origin. That the idea is like you've been touched by the Shadowfell, and that can be either through some sort of cosmic activity, or you can trace your lineage back to vampires. Any weirdness, and so like you get a quirk that is kind of like makes you like almost dead, where like you're clinging to life. It definitely has a really fun role playing and like visage. um Eyes of the Dark, it gives you dark vision, which is great, especially for those humies. Then you can use spell points to make it so you can see through your dark if you cast this darkness spell that you get for free, which is nice. um yeah, you can see through it, which really is good for you. Not great for your friends, but good for you. You get Strength of the Grave, where you kind of get like the zombie ability to not quite die unless you get hit by radiant or crit once per day, or once per long rest. So that's really nice. And if you don't succeed on the save, you get to keep the ability. So that's pretty cool. Their 6th level ability is really interesting because they get this Hound of Ill Omen, so they spend like 3 sorcery points, and then they get a direwolf that does its own thing and hunts down a target till it dies. And it's kind of scary to think about. You're like, I spent 3 sorcery points. Now there's a medium-sized direwolf that has temps and is coming to only attack you specifically. So if you're like, a mage is teleporting or running away, your hound will chase it till the end of the earth because it always knows where the creature it's after is, even if they're invisible. It can't be hidden from this hound, and that's really cool. Their 14th level ability is just straight incredible. When you're within dim light or darkness, as a bonus action, you can teleport 120 feet. That's also in darkness. That for free.
Forever.
So you just like
Forever.
boop,
Yeah.
boop, boop, and especially if you cast darkness spell, like you just got teleport. And then the Umbral form, 6 sorcery points, which is a good amount. But your 18th level, so that's only 1/3 of your sorcery points at that point. And you get resistance to all damage but force and radiant, and you can move through other creatures and objects. It lasts a minute, and it ends if you die or is incapacitated. And you take 5 force if you end your turn inside an object. So you essentially get a form that has only 2 weaknesses, and they're not weaknesses, it just makes it normal. You become pretty, able to a lot more survivability in your Umbral form, and that's a really cool capstone, especially with the ability for you to re-up it, by spending sorcery points.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I
I
definitely,
just like.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just saying, I just like the fact that you've become so infused with shadow magic, you essentially turn into a shade. Like,
Yeah, kind of.
cool. Let's talk about storm sorcery. Storm sorcery is dope. It's just cool. For anyone who thinks Thor is cool, or
Storm.
Storm, definitely Storm is probably a pretty good example of a storm sorcerer. Just throwing it out there. Um, and I like this one a lot. I'm a big fan of the slinging thunder and lightning and controlling the weather around you. It feels very powerful and very flavorful, and there's some cool stories to tell there. But right out the gate, I like that you can speak, read, and write primordial. Always nice to have another language, but it lets you understand and be understood by those who speak Aquan, Orin, Ignan, and Terran, which means you can talk to elementals. That's just cool. That's not something most people get, or you have to get real janky with comprehend languages or tongues or something. So you're just like, nah, I talk elemental. What's up? That's cool. Um, Tempestuous magic. Right out the gate, you can use your bonus action to briefly fly after you cast a first level spell or higher, and you can fly for 10 feet without provoking opportunity attacks. Again, you're a sorcerer, you're probably a little squishy, so having this kind of like cast a spell and before or after being able to move is really handy in a tactical kind of sense. Next up, you have Heart of the Storm. You gain resistance to lightning and thunder. Always great. And whenever you cast a spell of first level or higher that deals lightning or thunder, you get to hurt people around you that you don't like. It's not a lot, but it's just like, hey, are you near me? Lightning happens. That's how that goes. Um, Next, you get Storm Guide at the same level, sixth level, which I think is just flavor, which I like. They just kind of put it in there. It's not going to break anything, but it's cool to know that if it's raining, you could just use an action to cause rain to stop in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on you. You can just kind of have those epic moments of like the middle of a monsoon. You just kind of, you know, be the center of the storm. It's cool. And then you can control wind to some minor effects as well.
I
It's
just
just
I just want to say that if I were GMing, I'd also allow people to control snow.
nice, nice. Yeah, that's of course, sure. Um, and again, I just like that. That's flavor. It's pure. It's not there. It's only there to make you look cool. It's not there to like get one on the bad guys. It's just like, do you want to look dope right now? Do it. um, at 14th, you get Storm's Fury, which I think is a really good one. If you ever get hit by melee, which let me tell you, it's gonna happen, you get your reaction to just deal lightning damage to people. You just have a way to be like, "Did you touch me? I do not agree." And you just zap them with lightning equal to your sorcerer level. So by the time you get it, it's 14 damage, which isn't crap. And if they fail a strength save, they get pushed 20 feet away. So not only is it take some damage, but it's a little bit of crowd control and get yourself to safety as well, which you're never going to be sad about. And then last but not least, your 18th level ability as a Storm Sorcerer is you gain immunity to lightning and thunder. And whenever you gain immunity to stuff, it's super cool. Plus, it also means you can like drop shatters on top of your own face, and that's just fun. um, and you gain this magical flying speed of 60 feet, but you can slow down your flying speed to hand it out to your friends as you pick them up on the gale wind around you. And again, that's just cool and super useful. So, there's a lot of flying you may have noticed in the sorcerer class because it's a powerful mode of travel. But this one I like a lot because you get to help your friends and you still get to be this dope like ride the wind kind of person. So yeah, that's Storm Soul, and if throwing lightning bolts and blasting people with thunder and wind sounds cool to you, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna have a really good time.
Yeah, yeah, it's really fun. I've never seen anyone hit that high level with it, but that sounds awesome. Being able to do all that insane stuff. All right, I guess last but certainly not least, the oldie but goodie, the old wild magic.
Wild card.
Woo! I cut my brakes and your brakes. So their first thing is they get Wild Magic Surge. If you ever cast a spell of first level or higher from the sorcerer list, the DM can immediately have you roll a d20, and if you roll a 1 on it, you roll on the Wild Magic Surge. There's about 50 separate effects for the base Player's Handbook book. A bunch of them are good for you, some are really bad for you and your friends, and some are situationally bad good. And so it kind of gives you a whole different interaction with the game. And that's the start. Tides of Chaos, which is your other ability, is that you can gain advantage on a d20 roll, attack, ability, or saving throw. And once you do so, you have to finish a long rest before you can use it again. Though, at any time, your DM can give you this feature back and have you roll on the Wild Magic Surge table after you cast a sorcerer spell of first level or higher. And then you get it back. So it kind of it's a really fun class built on built with this kind of social contract with your GM. It kind of really, if you want to use your powers, cool, but they get to choose if your power is pushed back.
I recommend reminding your GM all the time
All the
that they
time.
can die to chaos you, because you'll find your GM's like, oh yeah, that's happening to you.
But you, you don't wink want it to happen to you. Uh, then at 6th level they get bend luck, which they just get another way to use sorcery points. Which they can give a plus or minus D4 to a creature as a reaction to a roll of a attack, ability check, or saving throw. So 2 sorcery points, and you can either have someone have a minus D4, or you or your friend have a plus a D4, and that can be really nice. You know, it's almost like a Cutting's Words, and you can do it always after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's really good. Controlled chaos lets you roll twice on the table and use whichever one you want. So, you know, you can turn like a really worst situation into an okay or amazing situation. And if you use any of the fun homebrew lists, some of these wild effects can be real wild. And then lastly, I don't think this is too crazy, which is spell bombardment. That whenever you roll damage for a spell and roll the highest number possible on any of the dice, choose one of those dice, roll it again, and add that roll to the damage. And you can use it once per turn.
Yeah, it's only one die. Like, eh. At 18th level, if I'm rolling a 5th or 6th level fireball, and oh, you're saying, oh, you got a 6, roll another d6. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess. Like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's cool. I can see how it's used well with like empowered spell. But
I guess, but it's only one. It'll only ever be one die.
yeah. So the answer is it is for free. So it's once per turn. So that's cool. And also it's not limited to sorcerer spells. So if you have other spellcasting abilities, you can get real weird. So yeah, I think it's a little bit lackluster, but your wild surging is just kind of insane. So if you can proc that as much as possible, you won't even care about your 18th level ability.
That's fair.
Yeah. So that's wild magic, and it's all about just going crazy. Remind the GM, be like, "Hey, I do this. Please give them back to me. I need to be able to surge."
Right. I would like to surge now. Yeah, I think we got through it there, Gino.
All right, we only have one last room for the base of the sorcerer. I think it comes down to talking about. Well, you know, every class has strengths, but every class also has weaknesses.
It does.
Ooh, 14.
Can you beat my big bad 14?
No.
You cannot.
Nope, I cannot. I got one whole roll.
It was as if the scrolls foretold.
My origin is going to be not rolling well on this game when we do this.
And my sorcerer origin is only rolling good on initiative when we do Dungeon Delvers.
Perfect. Magnificent.
So the last room of our dungeon before we move into the room of reflection is the weaknesses of the class, and every class has them. Some more than others, unless you're a paladin, or a druid. Jesus Christ. But sorcerers do have some very glaring weaknesses, and that is because they are kind of intended to be these glass cannons, and that is very much reflected by the fact that they get a D6 hit die, which, oh boy, that can be kind of rough. Now, con is generally their secondary stat, so that helps with that a little bit, but you're still gonna feel it, come a few levels when other people around you have decent hit points and you're still struggling in the hit point department. And they get no armor training whatsoever unless their lineage gives them armor training from that. So you only wear t-shirts and robes, and you have the lowest hit die possible.
I mean, you don't have to wear pants, so that's a benefit. Strength, no pants.
That's true. You could go shirtless and only pants, but it's a hard knock life.
Yeah, and now going more onto, they are full casters, which is amazing, but they have a severely limited amount of spells known. So, like, by the end of the day, you might only know, I think, somewhere between, like, 12 to 15. It's not a large amount, where a lot of other classes can switch, or, like, a cleric or wizard can have, their wizard level plus their int bonus of known spells a day, and that's comparatively, they're just going to have so many more than you. So that you have to kind of be okay with that. Like, you're going to have your tools, and they're going to be your specific tools, but you're rarely going to be able to change those tools into a different situation.
Yeah, big time. I know that was a constant struggle for me when I played a sorcerer. I knew what tricks I had, and I really didn't have anything but that. So and one of the next one is for being full casters, of which they are very much that. They're not ritual casters unless you take a feat to make yourself one. You know, a ritual casting is a great way to have some utility spells and some out of combat ways to handle problems. As a pure sorcerer without any adjustments, you have spells and sorcery points, not a ritual insight. So it's a weakness insofar as you have to be, you might still have some of those spells with the ritual tag, identify, detect magic, etc. But you have to use them the OG way or no way. So it is something you have to consider.
Uh, you don't get a lot of skills as a sorcerer, and you don't really get a lot of ways to get more skills. So you are not really focused. Like, you're only going to get what you get from your lineage and, like, 2 skills from sorcerer and, like, maybe your background. So be prepared to be kind of okay or bad at things. Because guess what? You didn't go to school. You're a sorcerer.
Yeah. Who needs nerd school?
Yeah, just talk your way in and out of that situation.
Next up, we have listen, if you ever encounter anti magic or even like dispel magics or some counter spells, and you don't have a counter spell to go back or dispel magics, anyone who shuts down your magic is going to be a real big problem for you, because you don't have weapon trainings outside of like the most dumb shit of like crossbows and daggers and slings and staffs. Like, if someone shuts down magic in an area, you quickly become a liability to yourself and others. So, you certainly have ways to protect against that depending on your choices, but you might find yourself up shit's creek.
And then lastly, there's a F ton of resource management with all of your spell points and your meta magics, and then your special features from your sorcerer's origins, all costing spell points or sorcery points, and then also you being able to convert your spells back into sorcery points or convert sorcery points into spell slots. It becomes a bit of a headache to try to understand your full use of resources. And so it's on you to know your character. And so if you don't mind balancing those numbers or running out violently quickly, because guess what you do as a sorcerer? Like, it's resource management. And if that's cool with you and you have no mind and you're okay with managing those numbers, it'll be a fun class. But if you don't like resource management, probably not the right one for you.
Yeah, those are the sorcerer weaknesses as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
If you have one that you can think of that maybe we've missed, let us know in chat. But I think it's time, Gene, to move on to the room of reflection.
It's still a blood fountain, but it's cool because I kept it the same note.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, why don't you start it up, Gene?
Yeah, I personally believe Sorcerer is a great multi-class. It's awesome. Or a full class, honestly, with other multi-classing. I did it for Warlock. I've seen people do a lot of Paladin. That's because honestly, action economy for Paladin they're amazing. But if you give them a little bit better action economy, they're just even more amazing. Um, but no, sorcerers are great because even a dip of like 2 or 3 levels in sorcerer, you get a lot out the gate, especially even a baby amount of meta magic you get. And if you're a class that can like cover spells in short rests or like get some back, cleric with like Channel Divinity or you know other ways, you can kind of jank out a lot more from your sorcery points. So I really
Yeah.
think they are probably one of the best multi classes, and honestly, they're kind of a really good multi class for charisma casters. Obviously, they are charisma casters, but like paladin, even warlock. I know how much you hate it, but with their short rest ability to get spell slots back, that's a ton of sorcery points if you can convince your groups to rest. And
Also, bard sorcerers.
oh yeah, you make up a lot of those evocation spells that you don't often get from bard.
Yeah, it's a match made in heaven. Again, anyone who watched the Curse of Strahd stream on our channel, you'll know that I did a lot of fucking janky bullshit as a bard sorcerer.
Oh yeah. You want to get
uh,
heat combos, Ren, and
yeah,
builds?
yeah. So I think that depending on your build or your choices, there are feats out there that are kind of no brainers. Stuff like Elemental Adept. If you are a Draconic sorcerer or if you are a Storm sorcerer, I kind of think you almost have to have those. Now again, you'll do fine without them. You just have to choose your spells accordingly. But Elemental Adept kind of lets you play outside of the norm and still get a lot of the effects of your class. Um, I will say that Spell Sniper is always great for sorcerers. Being able to, especially if you have some of those ranged attack, even just cantrips, and adding another cantrip to your repertoire, excellent. Um, Depending on your spell choices, you probably will always benefit from either Warcaster or actually, I think Constitution is one of their saving throws, isn't it? Yeah. So you wouldn't need Resilience Con, but you'll always benefit from Warcaster because anything that helps you keep your concentration going. If you take a number of concentration spells, you're never going to be sad to have it. Um, I will say though, now with this new feat that gives you sorcery points and magic options, I almost feel like you're crazy if you don't take it because you get free sorcery points, right? I mean, yeah, it costs a feat, but you get sorcery points and more meta magic options, and that's like the real core essence of your class. And you know, especially if you're going to multi-class into warlock, bard, it doesn't matter. If you were only going to say take 5 levels of sorcerer, 4 levels of sorcerer, you take that feat. Well, you're getting that huge resource that sorcerers get, and you're just getting to add a few bits on top. Um, so there's a lot of feat support there for the sorcerer. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, kind of touching up on elemental adept, but with that new transmutative spell where you can change the element types of your damages, that can get real juicy, as you said, with like draconic or storm sorcerer. And if you also have elemental adept, so you're piercing through damage reduction, like this is just mean. It's just raw.
it gets serious. Yeah,
Um, let's see. Some fun build. I think we talked that would be fun to do, like an artificer, clockwork sorcerer. That'd be
yeah.
cool. I could see some sort of like deep gnome, or I don't even go with something with like a really strange mind. Could be like a lizard folk, aberrant sorcerer, as you just got that like strange lizard brain that doesn't work like other people. Um, Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that you could do. A goblin wild mage if you want to go for like a booyak or whatever they're called.
Uyag.
Booyags, you know. Divine Sorcerer, yes, you can just do whatever you want. They're just so good. I don't know more besides that they're amazing.
I mean, for personal anecdotes, I've played seriously. Obviously, I played a bard, sorcerer, wild magic sorcerer, and College of Valor bard. And I'll be honest, I had a great time. I had my tricks. They were very. Those were the tricks I had, and those were the only ones I could do. But I had a lot of fun with the resource management um, of sorcery points, and let me tell you, surging when you wild surge, it's. I mean, again, your mileage may vary, but I just got giddy. I was like, guys, I don't know what's gonna happen, and that's part of the fun. Um, so yeah, I think so. I've seen some storm sorcerers who were badass. I've seen some high level wild magic sorcerer where you start to control the wild surges, and that gets really. That's actually a lot more potent than maybe you might think on paper. When you start being able to control your surges, it's quite good. Yeah, I mean, I think Sorcerer is a great class. I know that there is some. I don't know. I've seen a lot of homebrew builds for Sorcerer that removes sorcery points. Um, and maybe meta magic as well. I'm not sure. But, like, I don't know. I think that they are a great class, and you're going to have fun playing them.
Yeah, and also I think it kind of makes it. You have a lot of fun opportunities to be like, I was born this way. I didn't want this power, and like, can't get rid of it. It's just in you, and how it gets out of you, and what parts.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of cool stories to tell, and but you don't have to have like the dark edge of being a warlock. You don't have to have the complete dedication to study. You can just be like, I have power. I'm probably not the best person. I'm probably not the most responsible person to have this power, but I have it.
But it's me. Yep. Baby, I was born with it. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a fun story to explore. Alrighty.
yeah, no, I agree. I would say let's hear from the audience if there's any questions out there.
I don't
But I don't think that there is much in the way of that,
know,
which
buddy.
is totally fine. This has been a treat. I mean, I've always enjoyed sorcerers. I've seen a lot of sorcerer multi-class builds because sorcerer fits in. It's a nice puzzle piece with a lot of other classes. But thanks everyone who did show up, even if briefly. Um, thanks for coming by and delving another dungeon with us.
We'd like to thank 4 Gathers who followed us at the start of our stream. So we appreciate you. Obviously, Rennie, thank you for resubscribing to us. It means so much. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in and watching it, and hopefully we, as you see, we have successfully delved this dungeon of the sorcerer. And that we'll come forward in the future with our announcement for our new community goal, which
We will.
we think everyone will enjoy.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, you're like cutting in and out, buddy.
Oh, am I? Okay.
Okay, now you're good.
If there's any time to have audio difficulties. Thanks for joining us once again, and we don't have that many classes left, folks. So, Dungeon Delvers will continue to evolve, grow, and change as needs be, and we hope to see you here next time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening to Scott Buckley, who provides our music, free music for others, and we're gonna go find someone to raid. So
Let's go. Let's get them.
We're gonna do it. All right.